I do worry that the young generation today is a little bit consumed with this constant satisfaction, right? We see it with algorithms, we see it with high dopamine levels, we see it with this like yes man culture where they're just so consumed by entire processes being enjoyable and maybe not kind of missing some of that hardship in between.
That's the number one secret. No secrets are there. It really is that when I feel terrible, when I feel bad, when my worst days come knocking, it's simple. What I do is I will not let myself lose everything. I will do something, even if it's just 1%. If my usual days are 100 or 80, I'm gonna do one. But the fact that I'm just lying down and ruminating about how terrible the day is, guess what? But when you do one thing, he's just like, I never let a day slip without 1%. And that 1% can simply be just lifting a dumbbell, a home dumbbell that you have, and just doing 5 reps.
We're all so fundamentally the same. We need to eat, we need community, we need family, we need a house. Fundamentally, we are the same. We can get along with all cultures. And then, of course, there are a lot of things we learn where we are characterized as very different. There is going to be a lot of hardships in between, but that is not an excuse to let something go or break it or to stop caring for it. You got to get past that hardship, even if it's on a day-to-day basis, so that you can enjoy the end result. It wouldn't be worth it unless it was difficult.
Welcome, everybody. So, in fact, today is going to be a very interesting day as I woke up very early for this podcast. And there are very, very, very interesting reasons for me to do so. I am meeting a person whom I randomly met online in Vietnam. Well, it's crazy how you say Vietnam and online, but it really is very interesting because this person brings so much qualities into the conversation that you're about to hear. He is a free soul that decided one day, his wife and himself, to travel to Southeast Asia and do something different. They sold whatever it is that they had and decided to jump and say, okay, let's get into this adventure. Lo and behold, they arrive in Vietnam, and 2 months later, there is this interesting term that's being scattered across the world called COVID, where nobody at that time had any idea of what that thing is. Little that we know, his parents called in, his government called in, you should get back on the soonest flight. This is not safe. But he decided to do otherwise. And that's what really brought us to this podcast. If it wasn't for that decision, I do not think we would have ever met. And not only that we met, but I realized he brings in so much into the field of education, which is a huge field that I'm personally interested in, but from a completely different perspective. And just like we all know, and just like how you would see it, usually I would bring in non-native speakers. Some I would bring as native, but he happens to be a native Canadian citizen, a native English speaker who decided to pursue a career into education. But from a completely different lens, he took the full continuum from very young learners where your energy has to be at top notch and extravagant and enthusiastic and what have you, till he decided that maybe that's not what I'm here to pursue. But that did not really put him down as much as it really just helped shape and reroute his pathway into education. He moved into teaching, consultant, and then into entrepreneurship. We're speaking to the founder of the English Enhancement Company, who has decided to finally incorporate it in Vietnam, been here for the past 6 years, and decided to give whatever it is of value that he has to the world. And just because of him, we have marginalized areas in Vietnam per se that I know personally and I've worked with personally get the know-how of pristine, well-educated personnel to their very doorstep in their rooms just to educate them on what world-class education looks like. And this brings me again to how a very simple decision trickled that domino effect into how many people's lives are actually affected. He's a person who loves travel, loves food, loves company, and loves exploring cultures. And that's one of the beautiful things that we took away during this podcast, is because he taught me personally how cross-cultural experiences could shape who you are and make you a much more holistic human being relating to one another, and how he beautifully articulated it into a way where we're all fundamentally the same. I'll not tell you what the answer was, but I'll let you figure that out during the podcast. And lastly was one of the very beautiful things that we had, where we did debate style questions. And it was quite interesting as to get into his nitty gritty details and how he thinks about certain areas that we see on a day to day basis. Quite interesting perspectives, but I could have never asked for a better show. And I'm very, very glad that he had the time. So without any further ado, please lock in. You're about to get into a ride. One of the most important questions that I personally had, especially with your profile, Scott, is why Vietnam? And why Vietnam out of all the countries in the world that you decided to spend the better part of the past, if I'm not mistaken, 7, 8 years? So
Yeah. Well, I've been here for about 6 years. Yeah. You know,
6 years.
yeah, there was never a time where I thought Vietnam will be the country that I want to go live in. In Canada, a lot of Canadians that live abroad, they tend to go south. They go to Mexico, they go to Latin America, and that's just like part of our tropical escape. So Asia and Vietnam was not on my radar, but I did want to go travel around Southeast Asia. So the way that Vietnam came up is my wife and I, we had this beautiful plan to go travel around Southeast Asia. We started in Thailand and we had just enough funds to last a year, which sounded great at the time. We sold everything in Canada, we packed our bags, and we were on for this grand adventure. Lovely in thought. Thailand, we did for a month. And then we came to Vietnam because my dad was here at the time and we wanted to visit him. This was around March of 2020, which was not a great
Ooh.
time to be traveling. Naive. I was naive at the time. We heard about it in Thailand. We started thinking, like, what is this virus that's going around? And by the time we came to Vietnam, things started to shut down very quickly. And again, nobody knew what was happening. So the government is calling us back. We're getting emails, emergency flight, your last opportunity to get on a flight. And I have looked back at some of my journaling at the time. It's laughable because I often referred to it as this like momentary issue. And I wrote back to my family. I sent these long messages. Don't worry, we're safe. We'll be back next week or next month. So nobody had this idea that COVID would last a year, 2 years. We decided to stick it out in Vietnam. We were with a good group of people at the time. We were volunteering on the beach at a surf school, and this was just all part of the grand plan to travel around. We had no intention of going back to Canada at that time, but we also wanted to continue traveling. And so we ignored the Canadian request to come back. We ignored the advisories to go back to your country and play it safe. We just stayed in Vietnam thinking this will ride out very soon. One thing leads to another. COVID didn't end right away. We enjoyed Vietnam. We made it work. We started earning an income here as well and just like developing ourselves while still traveling as much as we could at the time. And that was the beginning of our time here in Vietnam. So that was early 2020. We started traveling late 2019. By 2020, we were here permanently.
Wow. Well, it's quite interesting because the whole idea behind packing up your bags and selling everything and just going to oblivion, right? You're like, all right, you know what? Let's adventure and let's check out what's going to happen right over there. That's really
Everyone can do
interesting.
that.
You see, that's what I want to talk about, honestly, because I'll be frank, right? From where I come from, it's not so apprehendable or recommended, or you don't see this quite often, where people were to just sell everything and just go out there to explore themselves. But I realized that this culture is more Western and it's
Yeah.
quite really applicable there. Where does this come from?
It's not advisable by many places, right? Because we are conditioned to understand that you graduate, you go to university, you get a good job, you buy a house, you follow down the trail of these milestones. And that's totally okay. I recommend it. It's safe, it's secure. But for some people, we itch for more. We want more. I love education, and I was always very much into education, but I wanted to explore and get out and just see things. Very adventurous when I was young. So we would go travel to South America. We would travel to Latin America. We did a 3 month road trip across Canada, living out of our car. I just
Wow.
had this need to move, to see things and move. And I like to see the physical world and not just a destination. So when I travel, I don't want to go to that city. I want to experience the journey on my way to that city. That's what I liked. So yeah, packing up everything was definitely a big call. And I would say for most people, if they're in the middle of their career, not advisable. Keep doing what you're doing. But if you're in between transitions, if you're finishing university, if you're um, considering a new industry or new career, you have this grace period where people don't expect much out of you. And that's when you should take the opportunity to travel, to see something different, to move. It may or may not work out.
Well, yeah, once again, right? It's like more of a risk that you take, and I really like how you just put it, for example, in that grace period territory. One question that comes to mind, like, okay, so you're a person who been there, done that. What did you realize about yourself that you were not aware of beforehand?
Lots, lots. There is lots you learn about yourself through traveling. Very hard to categorize it because we also get older, we mature, and perhaps a lot of my experiences and learning would have happened if I just stayed in Canada. Perhaps we don't know, right? Um, I think the biggest thing about living abroad is mostly about culture and people. In some ways, we're all so fundamentally the same. We need to eat, we need community, we need family, we need a house. Fundamentally, we are the same. We can get along with all cultures. And then, of course, there are a lot of things we learn where we are characterized as very different, right? Between like Western people and maybe Vietnamese, or I lived in Thailand for a bit as well. So, just in general, culture can be very different. So I've adopted a lot of traits from the Vietnamese people that I just love. Right? They are very charismatic people. They're very outgoing. They're driven by their community, and these aspects I love. It's polar opposite from Canadian culture. So in a way, we get to like adopt and choose the best parts of every culture that we like, and then it becomes your values, your personal being.
Right, right. So, were there any? So now that we're speaking about the good part, I really like how you broke it down into the real values that you took away, specifically from the Vietnamese culture, given that that's where most of the time you spent. Were there any regrets, Scott, that you thought of yourself at one down moment, say, for example, lying on your bed? What if nothing of that has changed? Or what if I did not take that leap of faith? What if I been XYZ back in Canada?
I think luckily the politics and the economy in Canada has just supported my decision more and more. Things are and this is not a hit on Canada, but things are not improving for living conditions, right? When we talk about the three most expensive areas of your life, which is your rent or your mortgage, your transportation, and food. And in Canada and in the West, those three have gone skyrocketed. They're not reducing. They're not staying the same. life isn't getting easier or cheaper, it's getting more expensive and more difficult. Uh, a lot of people make it work. It's very possible to make it work in Canada, to have a comfortable life, to have all of the necessary things that you need to stay in budget. Not a problem. But you have to play the game and you have to be skilled in that area. So I haven't regret any of my decisions. I love living here. I wish I could visit my family more often. I wish airfares were, not skyrocketing. That would be nice. But out of my control at the moment.
Right. Whoa. Because once again, right, I personally second that thought because I get asked that question quite frequently as well, where I'm a person who have unilaterally found myself all the way in Southeast Asia for the better part of past 10 years, right? And I wasn't really the person who was born in my country, right? I was really born in another country, and then and then grew up in a completely different country, and then pursued my studies and what happened in my professional career early on in a completely third, fourth country, and that's why they call me a third cultural kid. Do I have any regrets if I were to be asked the same question? Well, no. I don't think I would have done it any better. And it's just a mantra, just like we were speaking before we started recording this. It really is. It's just, I feel it's more of ordained that you go through what you have to go through. Mm-hmm. And you just do not know. Like, that book, I'm not really sure about the name, where they say grass is always greener on the opposite end. Right. Yeah. It's like, if I were to just be there, if I were to just have that qualification, or if I just had that extra cash or what have you, you'd have been happier or more fulfilled or what have you. I just feel that this is just our brain trying to put us out of the wavelength that we're supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And
I could imagine, like, as a multicultural person or someone that has lived in different cultures for a long time, you understand that we are more flexible, that we can adapt, we can kind of merge into different cultures. And, living in the same city that you were born in does not make you like more true to your culture, doesn't show more respect, right? Once you are experienced with moving, with traveling, with different nationalities, different cultures, I think we just learn to appreciate our culture more, because you have to do the celebrations, you have to do the holidays, the traditions in order to keep your culture. Otherwise, it slips away very quickly. So we tend to value those traits of our culture, our first culture, I think a little bit more because we're at a distance.
That's a very interesting thought, because I always thought to myself, if I were to be in my country, born and raised, and that's where I pursued what everyone pursues, it would make me more patriotic, or it would make me more true to my identity. But now that you brought it from that different perspective, where you said, now that you know the opposite, or you know what's different, you've seen the black and white, and I don't necessarily mean the colors in essence, but you've seen the opposite, or the polar ends, just to quote you again. It really makes you appreciate. Just like, the saying that says you never really know the worth of something till you lose it, or till you're not really aware of it, or it's not within your control or custody. It's just a very similar thought. Wow, that's interesting, man.
You're from Egypt, right?
Yep.
Okay, so if you're in Egypt and you're eating local cuisine, it's not considered anything special because you're just there eating the food that grandma or mom cooked. But if you're in Vietnam and you find an Egyptian restaurant, that becomes the excitement of your day, of your week. You tell all of your friends about this Egyptian restaurant because you're like, this is my food. So there's just so much more connection to it, or maybe appreciation.
Absolutely. I remember back in Malaysia when I was a student, there was a couple of Egyptians out there, and we found this Egyptian place that was honestly very, very, it was quite small. The business was about to collapse, and literally the guy has no idea what to do, but all what he just thought of, well, we get a lot of Egyptians here, and it would be nice to open an Egyptian restaurant. So ever since I knew that, most of my expenses were actually going to his pocket because that's my
Mm.
food, it feels so
Right.
special. You can identify with that to the extent that
Yeah.
I believe we were the sole reason to make him actually stand up on his feet so that he does not go bankrupt
Mm.
when we were actually, trying to buy out some of his food. But I really can resonate with like, that's me. That's part of me. That's mine.
Yep.
That area, that connection.
And his hardships becomes your hardships. His success becomes your success because it's a community outside of the country. So you have to kind of band together.
You know what, Scott? Honestly, when you circling back to the area where you spoke about how you made it very simple, that we're all fundamentally the same, regardless of our race, regardless of our color or nationalities. I
Mhm.
just like how you put it in a very nice way. We all need rent, we all need food on the table, and probably transportation and what have you, and you categorize it that way.
Mhm.
What would your advice be to people who find it difficult to not per se to let go of their traditions or culture or their limited beliefs, the ones that they were raised with back in their home countries? And they feel like they're just limited. They do not know how to interfere. They do not know how to move in new culture. What would your piece of advice be to people like this?
This is a good question. And I sometimes find it hard to answer because as a Canadian, we have a lot of innate experience with multicultures living in our country. It's just something that we are raised with. From the day that you were born, you are going to school with a lot of different people, a lot of cultures. It's hard to find a community in Canada that is just Canadians, European settlers. What are Canadians? Um,
Hmm.
it's tough to identify. So I guess growing up, I was conditioned to understand that we all might have a lot of similar aspects, similar culture. And then there's a certain percentage, probably 50% or more, that go home and celebrate a different culture, or they go to a different type of church, a mosque or a temple, or they have different holidays. They don't follow the Canadian holidays, they have different celebrations throughout the year. So it's kind of like this dynamic map, right? Where we're all maybe celebrating something similar, and then people will branch off. This is my time to celebrate, or they will branch off. These are our restaurants that we typically like the most. Um, Now, on the flip side, if someone is going to another country and they want to embrace that culture, I think it's very much the same, right? Take part in the local festivals, take part in the local cuisine. You don't have to lose your culture. You just need to find space to do both. Space and time, I guess.
Right, 100%. Because you know what? This is a personal story, and you were part of it, and I just do not know if you're aware of it or not. Back in not too long ago, just like speaking of 2 to 3 weeks ago, or even a month, I'm not really sure about the timing, but here's what happened. I'm a Muslim, and I had, we have this month of Ramadan where we fast for a month. And then after we fast, we usually have this festival. We call it the Eid festival.
Yeah.
So part and partial of my tradition is I've seen everybody on Facebook, on my social media, in my circle, right? That's what the algorithm always shows me, of course. Everybody posting Eid photos, like everyone's happy, we did it, we made it, and blah, 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 right? And then I decided, well, but a big portion of my followers and the people who follow my work aren't necessarily the same culture or even the same religion. But it was a very interesting experiment, Scott. I posted the photo and on all my professional networks. And here's where your part comes in. This is not to shame anybody or to think little of anybody or to belittle anyone, but honestly, this is what made my day. I know you come from a completely different race, you come from a completely different religion. And when I posted that, and you literally came back to my personal contact, not just, publicly, but you came in and you were like, happy Eid, man. I
Mm.
showed that to my wife and I was like, oh my God, I'm so happy. look at this in Vietnam and I'm getting this. So it really shows how when you know different cultures, it's a skill. It makes people grow closer to you. This
Yeah,
is a
it's
real
important.
story here.
Yeah. No, on a personal level, I think it is important because I understand that during this time, there is a lot of sacrifice, right? Not just with food, but I think it's a spiritual sacrifice, it's a mental sacrifice. So, I worked with a lot of Muslims my whole life. It just, at the beginning, for me, it felt very unfair that we are all having this like lovely day, we're eating lunch together, and then people that are um, celebrating Ramadan, they're not eating throughout that shift, let's say, for example, for that day. And so when I was young, 16, 17, 18, I started to clue in that we're all having the same day, but some people are celebrating a different religious time. And so their days look different, their sacrifice look different. And so it's something to be acknowledged or honored. And to be honest, I felt like a jerk because Eid ended on a Friday and you work a lot on a Friday. I know you work a lot. And it wasn't until the end of the day that I clued in happy Eid. And you just worked all day. Like there was many hours. If I had known before, we could try to, get some time off or, give you a break, right? Because it's
Right,
your
right,
festival.
right.
So I think it's important to honor other
It is, it
cultures.
is. Because honestly, if I were to really map this out now on a different scale, and I say, and if I find a Vietnamese back in my country during the Tet period, and I know they're here as an expat now, they're in my country, and I just pass by with a very simple smile, and I say, "Chúc mừng năm mới," or Happy Tet holiday. How do you think they would feel? I'm quite damn sure that's going to light up their entire day.
Mm-hmm.
Right. They'll
100%.
feel important. They'll feel heard. They'll feel like they're not just a minority in a random place because life took them there for God knows what reason. That is what I'm talking about, which is once again circles back to your intro about how we're all fundamentally the same, but putting in this being actively pursuing knowing other people's cultures, especially when you travel, it really is a skill. I just believe it's a must have, not just a good to have. It really helps in shaping who you are. Whew. Scott,
Yeah.
I'm not always here just to speak about cultures and religion and what got you to Vietnam. Let's get to a very, very interesting part now. The good stuff, right?
The good stuff, the 9 to 5 stuff.
The 9 to 5 stuff, and sometimes the 5 to 9 stuff. You get what I'm trying to say, right? Yeah, there you go. Full circle. So I know. I know you've dedicated a part of your career to education, if not entirely, but in different facets through different lenses. My question is, how did your journey evolve from teaching into consulting into entrepreneurship?
Mm-hmm. I really do love education. I liked it when I was studying in school. I'm back in school right now for God knows 100 different reasons. So I just like education. And the cool thing with it is that when you're passionate about it, other people want to learn with you as well. It could be any topic, anything, but as long as the instructor, the coach, the teacher is passionate about their topic, people are going to be drawn towards that. So that was the beginning of my interest in teaching, in education as well. But it very quickly merged into like I wanted to actually give people help or assistance on something that I thought mattered. And at the time, I was speaking or teaching in a lot of language centers. And there's a bit of a tendency for language centers to treat their teachers like entertainers, right? It's not a secret, especially for the young kids. We're teaching English and you have to be exaggerant, you have to be charismatic, you have to be a clown in class. And I'm sure a lot of kids learn that way, but it wasn't satisfying my purpose or what I wanted. So I very quickly moved into one-on-one teaching to coaching to consulting. And we were doing large corporate client companies. So I felt that there was a lot more benefit for two reasons. We merged into adult teaching, mostly myself at the time, and then I hired one teacher. We grew very slowly together. Um, Teaching adults is kind of an interesting area in Vietnam because right now, English education is being instilled into their curriculum. So the young kids are getting this deep advantage where they have English from day dot, from the beginning. Whether or not they pursue a life that uses English, it doesn't matter. They at least get the fundamentals of learning another language. Some schools are also offering other languages like Chinese, just because by population, it is another business strategic move. So the students get engaged with language. Vietnamese adults didn't have that opportunity when they were younger because, one, Vietnam was not really international. It wasn't open to the world until the late 80s, early 90s. So they didn't need it, and that's totally fine. It's a lot harder to learn a language in your older years. We know that when you're an adult. So when I started working with corporate clients, I found that this was kind of an interesting niche for me. I got to help adults who want to learn the language. They want to be able to compete with their child in some respects, or maybe they want to just increase their international competitiveness. They work on an international team, so they wanted to perfect that language. And I really enjoyed working with them. So in that respect, we started also doing very specific tailored courses for groups. We did finance, we did health, we did a lot of tech as well. And we would curate or tailor these courses for adults to study. That's what got me passionate about these individual programs. Not trying to mass produce English, not trying to use a textbook to think that one size fits all, but rather to take a tailored approach and allow people to learn what they need to help advance their career. So we go from there, and then now I'm mostly in consulting or business develop, managing staff as well, which is a fun avenue for me. It's all part of it's a cog in the wheel, right? Things need to be moving. Somebody needs to move things to reach more people. And I like being at that intersect of how do we help or reach more people to do what they want? So we do a lot of debates, public speaking right now with younger kids, which is fantastic. It's fun, it's competitive, and it helps the students have this academic advantage in their world. So I find a lot of value in that. It's interesting work and it's creative. I get to pull on to the areas of my life that I find most enjoyable, right? There's a creative element, there's a business strategic element, there's communication with people, and I'm very much at the crossroads of culture. I think most days what I'm doing is translating from one culture to another culture
To another one.
in English, but it's like cultural connect.
Right. And really, this takes me to this question where you've worked across teaching, consulting, business. Where do you think education is failing to prepare students for real world communication?
There's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack. Um, to be fair, education systems and education providers are doing the best they can for the most part with the tools that they have. Now, every country has a different problem. If we look at the West, I haven't been there for a long time, but I understand that there's a lack of funding for schools, for public schools, and that burden goes on to the teachers as well. From what I can see, I don't think the technological explode or the AI boom I don't see it yet as a massive problem in the West compared to Asia or compared to Vietnam. I think right now, what we're dealing with is this fine line of how to educate young people with technology in a way that's both making them competitive and up to date with today's world, but not killing the the skills that humans need: thought,
Hmm.
thought process, creativity, analytical skills. So it's a very fine balance that we're trying to introduce tech, AI, without it overriding the skills that humans need to survive.
Right.
The biggest challenge in education right now, I don't think we have an answer yet, because as we develop, AI and tech is developing. So it's this cat and mouse game. We'll be in this scenario for a long time. And I think most educators are doing the best they can.
So if you were to be a key decision maker, Scott, what would you do or what decisions would you take on to help decrease that gap? Or perhaps, just like you said, AI develops as fast as we develop, if not faster, exponentially. How would you, where you're at right now, in a third world country, trying to be a country that provides to the world, what would your bread and butter be to start something off like that?
I think, well, definitely we need to break things down into steps. Whether it is education or a country's development from developing to developed nation, we need to follow these steps. And we could do that at an accelerated rate. We can speed things up. For example, in most countries, we started with very low tech. We went to dial internet, cable internet. We slowly started integrating flip phones and then the smartphone, and there was this long progression of time where humans, adults, had time to adapt with the speed of technology. That seemed kind of natural and nice. Countries, developing nations that are rapidly turning into developed nations, i.e., Vietnam, they're skipping some of these steps. They're going from very low tech to very high tech in a short period of time. And that plays into the education system as well. You had parents who were raised without technology, perhaps without electricity in some cases. Their children are now being taught, educated, and experimenting with AI. There's a very, very small gap in between. So if we're to look at the education system, I think we'd need to break it down into these like organizational steps where students learn how to use the computer first, not a smartphone. We don't need them on shorts before they can open up an email. It's just too rapid, too fast. We need to
Hmm.
get them online experimenting, look for information, fact check information, find a reliable source before they go into AI. Once they get these foundations, now you can start using AI or technology because you understand what to flag as concerning or what to flag as incorrect, or when to see AI is overstepping, right? So they need to learn
Hmm.
the basics before they jump into it. So I would put that into all educational schemes. It's tech literacy.
I see. It's just like I personally am a big proponent of financial literacy, and it's just a very similar caveat to tech literacy as well, where people, as much as knowing things is a good and a bad thing, depends on context. Really, it is about the beautiful part that you mentioned, where you break things down into key steps, and you just take it on from there. But that absolute swish or swift or swap to from nobody to everybody, it is good, but some people would debate that it's growing rapidly, and different generations are wired in different ways, so that's what they
Mm-hmm.
got. Unlike us, for example, just like I believe our parents had to jump on the bandwagon because there's something called the internet, the dial in, remember?
Yeah.
Now, when we were born, we had it built in because the internet was there and we got it from the get go, from day dot, just like you said. Same
Mm-hmm.
thing applies. We have to, the internet boom is our AI boom, and we have to jump on the bandwagon. whether it is to just save face or to get our competitiveness out there or what have you. It's like, guys, we're still, we still matter, you know? But at the
Yeah.
very same time, the other generation has it built in, especially if we're speaking about Gen Alpha. Gen Z are already doing crazy things with it. And it's
It's
just, it keeps on going, right?
intense. Yeah, definitely. And with literacy, financial literacy as well, hugely important. Everyone needs to learn about the basics of financial literacy. But in the same respect, you wouldn't start teaching children about cryptocurrency before they can manage a piggy bank. So we have
Right.
to, it doesn't matter how far ahead the future is or how advanced we are in certain areas, we still need to be teaching kids and starting from the beginning. Accelerate it a little bit, but give them those foundational tasks to learn about before they get into this rapid world that is constantly changing.
100%. It's just always go back to the foundation, always go back to the basics. Never been a failing principle, to be honest. I want to thank you for that, seriously.
Yeah.
Scott, I know that you're very, very into communication and how people present themselves and how people represent their values and what have you. And just like you know, I'm a big proponent of that.
Yeah.
Say public speaking, say debates, say branding yourself, whatever it may be. I just feel that I'm a big proponent that CVs are becoming a little redundant nowadays, especially with this fast paced world. And it's really about your social presence. If I were to know Scott today, what the first thing I'm going to do, who's Scott? And I'd get a huge list of what Scott does, what Scott believes in, what Scott strives to do, and so on and so forth. And I believe that's where we're going. It's not really a CV with a bunch of papers that's already chat GBT'd or an LLM created, right? And we all know it, right? So, and it's just like you said, it's no secret. But once again, I'm a big proponent that communication, though, which is a purely human output, that can be very challenging to AI to replace or to even mimic. It could help, but it will never replace. And that's why this brings back again to the question where you work with companies, you work with corporate clients, you had the luxury of working with the whole, if I may say, the whole continuum, if I put it into perspective, from young learners all the way to professional adults.
Very much so.
What are companies actually looking for when they say good communication skills?
You're right. You're right. That communication is hugely important. And I second your idea that CVs are just not an accurate representation of a person anymore. It's great to see if someone is skilled, educated, and studied. And that's something that we still need to be showing or bragging about. But it doesn't really sum up a character in one piece of paper. All of their achievements, all of their soft skills as well, we can't put that down. So going back to your question about communication in businesses, I work a lot with people that are in international companies. So communication spans cultural context, it spans actual language and misinterpretation, it spans the difference between speaking English and writing English and people using AI in between there. So we're going to find a lot of different problems. Ironically, I think cultural communication is the hardest one to grasp and to understand, because a lot of people can learn English. They could get to the B2 level, the C1 level. They can take an IELTS exam, have a high score. They understand grammar. They understand language. But the people that make it different are us Westerners or native English speakers, because we like to make English so colloquial, very slang based, very idiom based. If you've ever spoken to an Australian, you understand what I mean. Or maybe
Tell me about
you
it.
don't understand, because I've had
No,
roommates
exactly.
who
I
are
would never
Australian.
understand.
I still have to get them to translate for me. So the point is that if you're studying a language for a particular international business, what I would first do is actually target that region. If you're going to do international business with America, study American English. Same with Australian, same with Canadian, same with British. I have a lot of adult students that devalue idioms or they just don't care to learn them because they seem like riddles, they seem childish. You know, the cat's got your tongue or the grass is always greener. It just doesn't seem like real English. But when you get into a business meeting or when you speak with high level, C-level officials in the West, they speak in riddles because riddles help us to avoid the honest truth. And they help us to buy time when we are speaking. Instead of saying, I've missed an opportunity and I thought the opportunity was better if I did XYZ, we say the grass is greener on the other side. I know, you know what you mean. Right? So it avoids those uncomfortable conversations. So
Love it.
idioms are cultural connection.
Oh my God, I really love how you broke it down to the uncomfortable truth. People use idioms and what have you just because they sometimes find themselves not very comfortable in sharing the uncontrollable truth or the inevitable truth, right? And it's crazy because a lot of people when you get to that level, or if you're in a position where you have to interact with that level, the C-suite level or the C-level directorship and what have you, it really becomes a lot more confusing because they're not really speaking the English we know. It's the English manufactured with some jargon and lingo and idioms that fulfill the prophecy of whatever it is that they're trying to do. Skipping honest conversations. I'm going to stop you there, Scott, and I'm going to ask you, how do you deal with that? So imagine I am I'm not a native speaker, so right? Not imagine I am not a native speaker, but if imagine I'm not a native speaker, right? and here's the thing. What would your piece of advice be for me to jump on that bandwagon or to help decrease that gap to look like, okay, I can manage, I can interact, I can communicate, I understand? Is it really just to go ahead on Google or ChatGPT and to study idioms, or how is it like?
No, definitely not. And to be honest, the undervalued skill is just jumping onto YouTube and watching shorts. Obviously, curating your algorithm so that you're getting the right type of content, the right location, and let's say status level or career level that you're looking for. If you went on and you looked for American business phrases, or you just found a podcaster like yourself, or you found somebody that speaks casually, watch a lot of content, engage with those shorts. You can speak to it like you're in the conversation. I like to watch a lot of podcasts, and I find that if I was looking for English content for my student, English introductions or English phrases, it's always so sanitized for the learner. They speak slower, they use less idioms, less phrases, they look like a textbook. That doesn't help anyone. That teaches you to prepare for IELTS. But if I go on and I just look at American funny videos or American banter or just YouTube shorts from American speakers, now that's real English. And that's what I share with my adult students. That's what I share with people that are learning English. It's not content made for English learning. It's just English content. And that's where you'll learn.
Mm-hmm. English banter regarding the area that you're about to delve into. When just like what you said earlier on, you're targeting Australia, Canada, South Africa, America, wherever it is. Focus on to getting your feed to be focused, or getting your algorithm per se to that specific area, and literally jumping into what the street talks. That's the real English that you get. I remember, if I'm quite sure you're aware of him, Tony Robbins had
Right.
this beautiful show before, which I watched more than a gazillion number of times. And this thing always comes up and I never get bored of it. He's like, whenever it is that I have to give a speech in a place I've never been to, well, there's hardly a place that he's never been to by today. But anyways, so when he goes early on in his career, what he used to do is honestly something very applicable to what you were just saying right now, Scott, which was perhaps I'm going to give a talk in Malaysia and I've never been. And if I'm going to speak to the Malaysian citizens, the nationals, the locals, I need to make sure I'm speaking their language just to engage. And we all know in public speaking, it's all about engagement. It's all about connection. It's not really about anything else. And what he does is that he would call up the organizer and say, okay, when's my talk? The 27th of April. Great. I need to be in Malaysia by the 17th of April. Really? You're going to spend 10 days in Malaysia? Nothing else? I thought you were busy. Well, yes, exactly. And guess what? It's not just that he goes to the fancy restaurants or his 5-star hotel and gets a beautiful spa with black stones on his back. No. What he does is he goes to that street in a local area and he goes to the cheapest barber and he goes like, I need a haircut, please. And he starts translating, whether it is through Google Translate, what have you, and gets the jokes, gets the idioms that you're talking about. So when he goes on stage and he spits one out, people go elated. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And that really changed my perspective. Before I speak to anybody, I need to know, what are you made of? Is there a famous drink that you have? Is there a nice joke that you say when someone's missing a deadline or if someone's always late? What's the culture like? It really breaks the ice easily.
Yeah. And it maximizes your experience there as well. Right. If he went to Malaysia for 5 days or for 3 days, it's forgettable because you haven't really retained the country. You haven't met the people and sat with them and had a beer with them. It's just not something we're going to write home about. But when you go for a long period of time and you really like invest time to be with the local culture, that's something that stands out a lot more in our memory.
100%,
Say
100%.
within Vietnam too. Like some of my best moments in Vietnam is truthfully when I had more time and I would just go and sit with Vietnamese friends, just sit with them for a long time, have coffee, have beer. Perhaps we're not speaking the same language. There's about 20% on either side that we can communicate. But those were the funniest moments. You get to understand like kind of their playfulness, their jokes. That was the
Yes.
time, right?
Right, right
And the
on.
funny language as well.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, honestly. Couldn't agree more. Whew. All right, so here's where we're going to jump into a very interesting section, Scott. All right. So part of this podcast is going to be debate style questions. All right. So here's where you got to think. There you go. Exactly. You got to roll those sleeves and getting our hands dirty now. All right. So here's where we go. Do you agree or disagree? IELTS is overrated in today's job market.
Yeah, yeah, I do. I do. Am I allowed to like justify my reasoning? We're just yes or no.
100%. Yes. 100%.
Yeah, it depends on your market. Of course, some countries like Vietnam, they have a very high regard for IELTS. Some job applications require it. Okay, if it's required, then you need it. For the mass market, no, I don't think so. No, there are other language proficiency tests out there. Some that are less academic as well. IELTS is designed for academic English for universities, although they have a general one, but it's not real world English. Now, most language learners need to find something else to replace IELTS in order to prove their qualifications, and that's fine. I think that's standard. We still need to show an employer or a university that we have this language ability. So there's many others. There's PTE, PTE Core. There's CELPIP if you're in Canada. There's a lot of language tests, and some of them are more designed for communication styles, business English. I think even Duolingo has a test that's widely recognized.
Right. Right. 100%.
And
Interesting.
you?
I believe 110%. Maybe I'm not programmed for a standardized test, Scott.
Mhm.
And that's always my go-to debate aphorism, if I might put it that way. I'm not just being put into, don't put me in a room with a timer, with a weird invigilator, and asking me to finish a certain number of questions in a certain period of time to gauge my English language skills. What if I had a bad day?
Yeah.
What if I'm not well prepared? What if I have a problem with stress? I know some people would debate on this, and I'm more than happy to take on that debate all day long, but it's really about the question that I asked you earlier before the whole debate style questions that I'm asking you right now. English is the street level.
Yeah.
English is the people you meet. English is the cultures you associate yourself to, if we're speaking about English generally. And it's that formula, right? Where you add all these variables in and then you become you have your English.
Yeah.
But when we start developing areas where accents are a prestige,
Mm.
because here's where it comes. I come from the Middle East. And let me tell you, and I'm quite sure you may be aware of this, but English is something, your accent is something completely different. Like we brag when we send our kids to international schools, not because they're expensive, but it's because they're going to meet a native speaker.
Yeah.
And excuse me for my language, but you want to meet that blonde woman. Oh, that's my son's teacher. Or you want to meet that guy with blue eyes. You
Yeah.
right? That's
Yeah.
something that they say. And I have nothing against that. Maybe because there is no enough qualifications with the non-natives in that country or that specific area that would give the same amount of value. But here's the
Mhm.
thing. What I know very, very deep down is that I know credentialed and well-spoken people, but when you put them in a test, they don't make it to that international school. So they will never meet your son or your daughter. But drop that and let's get street smart now and have a proper conversation. And now we talk. So I definitely agree. I've never been a standardized test guy. Never, ever, ever been. Never will be, I guess. And yeah, right. I'll be honest with you, right? So this is a very personal story, but when I first came into Vietnam, I was quite lost. Like, what do you guys do here? How do you guys make money here, right? And of course, I come across language centers. I come across, the bread and butter of how Vietnam works with
A
expats, right?
lot of expats love the language centers.
Exactly. So I remember I applied to this center and then I'm like, okay, guys, here you go. That's my CV. And these are my accomplishments and achievements. And I'd like to be a part of your community. And the first thing they say, great, let's do an interview together. We did the interview. I passed, thank God. And then after that, we need your TOEIC assessment. I was
Mm.
like, what is a TOEIC assessment? And apparently it's a Vietnamese English based assessment here where you have to do so that the authorities get to actually produce your work permit. That I agree with. There is a
Mhm.
purposeful reason. And what I love is that you gave me the benefit of the doubt and you actually sat down with me and gave me an interview. So you
Yeah.
know who I am.
Before
But
asking,
exactly before asking. But once you make a number on a piece of paper, the gateway, that's where my challenge is.
yeah, 100%. I agree. And I think in the West, we see a lot of this where companies are switching from just CV based to interview styles, to communication styles. And the questions get very creative on the application forms. But unfortunately, when people are applying in this mass system, right, when we have thousands and thousands of people applying to a company, they still resort to the qualifications. They still go back to, do you have XYZ? No, out the door. Uh, and that, I think that will take some time to change. But we do see an emergence of small entrepreneurial companies that are pushing aside just certifications, just education, and they're looking for genuine people that can do the job, right? They might have additional certifications that they did on Coursera or on whatever, XYZ. These qualifications prove that you're in the industry, that you care about this subject, that you're doing it in your free time to study more. It means more to me than education.
100%, man. And honestly, it's like Google, Google, the company itself, has already ordained that like a couple years ago. They don't care about your certificates. In fact, what I've heard from a person who actually applied to a position in Google, and that's not just off an article that I read, they never ask for your certs. It's all about the interview and what you bring to the table. What are your
Yeah.
skills? It's a very straightforward conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And just like Elon, when Elon had this beautiful podcast with, I'm not sure who, but that's how he really targeted or framed university life. He's like, it's a social experiment. You only go to university if you have the luxury to do. But he sees that university is a luxury, that you have some money that you'd like to get into some sort of community where you deem that you're going to learn a couple of stuff. But
Yeah.
that does not mean that you cannot learn it otherwise or elsewhere.
So here's the clinch I have in our debate. I understand and I experience that university takes you through this really intensive 4-year period where you study some subject. If someone is going to replace that with worldly experience, with workplace experience, with credentials, I would expect that it amounts to almost the same time and energy. And I say that because, like Elon Musk said, as a social experiment, people go to university and they learn a lot more than just the subjects. They learn about time management. In many cases, they learn about budgeting because they're a broke student that still needs to pay for rent and food. They learn about social connection and the benefit of networking, because simply networking with your teacher will get you a higher mark than having not talked to them at all. Right. So they learn all these like extra skills aside from the subject. So if we're comparing apples to apples, I would expect if someone doesn't go through the route of university, that they should spend equally as much time developing themselves in a particular area and not just floating around society saying, I think I'm into this. I think I'm into this. I'll try this. I'll do this, when it's very scattered, right? Like, and this is why companies such as Google will hire a tech engineer that didn't study, but they've built apps, they've built games, they have a whole system to prove that this is their life, right? So we do need to prove somehow that we are interested in this career, that we're putting in the
100%.
time and the commitment for it, whatever the career is.
There, 100%. I agree with you. It's don't be lousy if you're not going to university, of course, but it's where how you engage yourself and invest your time to whatever it is that you want to do. But it really is, I second your thought. It really is a good area to develop interpersonal skills.
Mm-hmm.
That is a very good area because you meet different people from cosmopolitan areas, different cultures and what have you. Hey, how do you do stuff and how do I do stuff and how do you laugh and how do I walk and why does this affect you? All these build this repertoire that you have this different lens you see the world through.
Mm-hmm.
Second question.
Yeah, let's go.
All right. So, okay. Should schools replace grammar heavy teaching with debate and speaking?
Huh. Grammar teaching with debate. Those are two very different areas, though. That's tough.
If you were to choose,
yeah, if I'm gonna choose, well, okay, depends. If you are a native speaker in the country of origin where you're speaking that language, by far, grammar is not necessary and it's learned innately. Maybe you should learn some basics of grammar. There are some fundamentals, but I think most native English speakers, and based on your language as well, we spend very little time actually understanding grammar. I learned more about grammar as an English teacher than I did in school. Before this, I could hardly say what an adjective was. Most people can't. What is an adverb? Nobody knows. Yeah, I think grammar is not 100% necessary. We learn it innately. Debate and public speaking, however, this crosses through a lot of different areas in your life. It crosses if you're in theater and you're a creative kid. There we go, public speaking. If you're in business and you're a finance guy, there we go, negotiating in business and public speaking and debate. If you're into sports, I'm sure you need to do a speech at some point, or you need to debate. I don't know. Do they debate in sports? Maybe. It crosses
Physically,
through
though.
big on that one. Uh, Public speaking, debate, these are skills that can transfer into a student's life, into their career and their adulthood. Grammar, we have tools for that.
Well, I think you'd know my answer by now. It goes without saying. All right. Interesting. Okay. Ah. Who? Who? I think you're a very good candidate to answer that. Is online education actually better, or are we just coping post-COVID?
Ooh, I have thought about this question quite a lot. And obviously, I would love to advocate online education because it's my bread and butter. It's what we do. And here are my thoughts. Online education is not going to replace in person learning. I would never expect a student to be homeschooled from 8 in the morning to 4 p.m. online. It's too much screen time. It's not enough social time, communicative interactions. We don't get those subtleties that we do with an in-person classroom. And kids have high energy. All the way up to 18, students have high energy. We shouldn't expect them to sit in a chair. The act of moving from classroom to classroom gives students this refresh in their brain. So I think in-person learning is fantastic. The benefit of online learning is that students do get to maximize the short windows of time they have in the evening or on the weekends. And parents get a break. Let's be real. Parents get that 1 hour where their child is locked into something else, and it's better than sitting them in front of YouTube. So there are a lot of benefits. And especially when it comes to language or skill building where they can't get in their city. That's something I love. What we do with kids debating and public speaking, a lot of them are coming from smaller communities that otherwise don't have access to these programs unless they're in Ho Chi Minh or Hanoi, right? So they're now competing on global stages. They're competing internationally because they get 50 hours to study at home, and then they travel to the big city for the competitions, right? So I see a lot of that benefit. They're able to access things that they don't have in their city. And same with me. I'm in university right now. I'm doing it online in Canada, in a Canadian province. That wouldn't happen without online education. So I'm very thankful for that.
Beautiful. I love how you took the perspective where it really brings the know-how, the skill sets, the skilled people to marginalized areas across the world, right? So a very small community can still get the very same teacher if they're willing to, who goes to the biggest universities or the best paid international schools in the biggest cities. That really it just makes it more, as they say, what was the word? Democratized, if I may say, right?
Yeah,
Where, yeah, right. Where everybody gets a fair chance. I mean, yeah, of course they got to pay something for it, but it's still it's there, better than nothing, right?
right.
And then that's a very interesting perspective. I actually very much
I
like.
I watched like a roundtable podcast at some point, and it was everyone was senior in their area. So we had some finance guys, we had some tech guys, we had some archaeologists as well, because the topic was about where we're going with AI and the future of careers and life. And something that stood out to me is that they all kind of agreed we're not in an era of information or just having to struggle against AI. What we're really in is this era of self motivation because everyone has access to everything. Me and you could take a course at Harvard. We can probably take a scuba diving course online as well. Like, we have access to everything. So, what the young generations are facing is not this, can I do? Is it possible? Is it in my means? It's, do I have the motivation to do this? And it's tough. It's tough, right? To motivate a 16-year-old to study more or self develop, or even an 18-year-old, right? So the people that are really going to like come out of this prospering, out of this AI generation, are those that can push themselves, motivate themselves, stay on focus, stay on track to do what they want to do.
Right.
Yeah.
They're there. Right. Here's where I have a couple of questions lined up where we're going to just delve into really about, okay, let's put it that way. So, okay, that's a very good one. Let's do it. So here's where I'm going to jump into what I like calling the relatable part. What's the relatable part? It's more about how people can relate to Scott as a person. They may not know you. And how can I relate with this random stranger I'm meeting online on this podcast? What was the moment you almost gave up but didn't?
Ooh, that's a hard question.
It's like you doing all that you do and, busy me knowing who you are personally on a ground level. You have a lot of moments and I can tell. So you have a lot of areas where you could easily snap, but you just decide not to, or at least that's what I think. So tell me more about that.
I'll tell you. So at the beginning, we talked about this mantra: if it's not difficult, it's not worth it. And where that came from was a few years ago, 2022, 2023, perhaps 2023. I'm a Capricorn, so I really like to have projects and goals, and it consumes my life 100%. I am at the mercy of my goals, and they just direct me. I don't direct them. So this is something that's very passionate for my life. Around 2023, we wanted to do something different. We had spent some time in Vietnam, and we were trying to explore options, right? I had no significant ties to Vietnam at the time, aside from just loving it. And so we decided to move to Thailand. And this created a real bubble in my life where I wasn't certain if I was going to continue with the work I was doing or put 2 feet in and jump in with all the energy I had. And I was dancing around these ideas of, should I kind of cut it now with the English teaching? Should I look for something different? And it was a struggle. It was a day-to-day struggle to keep my personal business going, right? You know it, as an entrepreneur, you spend every day, you wear many, many hats. You are the marketer, you are the content creator, you are the face of the company. You do a lot, the financial advisor for yourself. Every day you're putting in 20 hours just to try and make the business do something. And I felt like that was a lot at the time. But my Capricorn self came out of me. And by the time we went to Thailand, I had made the decision that, okay, we're just going to jump in with 2 feet. You're going to register this as a company. You're going to make it happen. So that took some time, but it was something that I was proud to do and came out alive as well. So that nobody sunk.
It is. And it circles back again to how simple you put it out, where if it's not difficult, it may not be worth having, or maybe not worth experiencing in the first place.
Yeah.
And taking that decision, right. We have to. And it's crazy because how I even remember that I come from the belief that especially in my religion, it's ordained that with every hardship comes ease. And there's a huge difference between after every hardship comes ease. No, that's not what we're preaching. What we're preaching was with every hardship comes ease. So they come in tandem, in parallel.
No,
And
that's nice.
yeah, sorry?
I like that. Yeah, it's together. It's
It's
not
with.
after, you're not reaping the rewards. It's with. It comes
It's
as part
with,
of it.
exactly. And that's that really what, if that's your Capricorn self, that's what really moves me personally, is that I know I'm about to get into this area where I may be a huge big fat zero in, or I'm just getting started, or I'm career shifting, or whatever it may be. Yeah, these feelings aren't good. But if you just learn how to embrace them, and somehow, some way, you do what Scott did, where you just decide to put both feet in and see how it goes. Because whether you like
Yeah.
it or not, and here's what to get your perspective on, Scott. Whether you like it or not, you are taking a decision. If you're procrastinating it, that's already a decision taken innately.
True.
If you say no, you automatically said no to the yes, and vice versa. You're already taking a decision, but we just don't like programming ourselves in that way, right?
Yeah. Very much true. And I think like ultimately you have to enjoy something that you're doing. You don't have to
Mm,
enjoy all aspects of it, but if you're going to jump into something and it's going to be hard and it's going to be miserable and there's a 50-50 chance that you're going to fail completely, as all entrepreneurs are thinking of on a day-to-day basis, it doesn't matter if you really really enjoy what you're doing. And I understand that that's cliche. Everyone says you must like what you are doing. But in the last year or 2 years, I've come to realize that that is what made this career possible, and that is what made this career enjoyable. I put up with a lot of crap on a day-to-day basis, but I love doing it. And I love the work that I'm doing on it, at the end of the day, let's say. Maybe not during the day. But finally at the end I can sit back and I'm enjoying what I do. So it's worth it. All of the hardship, it's worth it.
Scott, I want you to talk to me more about how, yes, do something that you enjoy doing or like doing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to enjoy the full process.
Yeah.
But does that mean you have to be sure that you like what you do so that it helps you withstand the quote unquote crap that comes with it? Or how do you manage that?
I do worry that the young generation today is a little bit consumed with this constant satisfaction, right? We see it with algorithms, we see it with high dopamine levels, we see it with this like yes man culture where they're just so consumed by entire processes being enjoyable, and maybe not like kind of missing some of that hardship in between, or having high expectations for something. I don't know. We work with a lot of teenagers, and I've had a lot of teenagers in my life, and I can see that a water park doesn't wow them. Going to the beach doesn't wow them. Like they have very high expectations, and the dopamine's coming from a different drive. So
Right.
that worries me. I think something we need to develop and something we need to understand as a human race is that there is going to be a lot of hardships in between, but that is not an excuse to let something go or break it or to stop caring for it. Right? You got to
Mhm.
get past that hardship, even if it's on a day to day basis, so that you can enjoy the end result. It wouldn't be worth it unless it was
It's
difficult.
just difficult. And I love how you just helped me segue into this question. What does showing up actually look like on your worst days?
Like personally, me, what does
Yeah.
showing up look like on my worst days? What are my worst days? Um, I live in the countryside in Mune, so I'm very happy at home. I will spend every day at home, every hour at home. I have to motivate myself to go out. On the weekends, I spend a lot of time with my friends, but Monday to Friday, if I need to be, I can stay at home Monday to Friday. Sometimes this gets to me a little bit, right? When your only social interaction is your wife, your dog, and your online clients, friends, and coworkers, um, you're kind of missing this like regular banter, going to the coffee shop, being in an elevator with people. We're humans; we need connection. So my worst days are when I start to get a bit crazy and weird because I'm lonely and there's not human connection. So on those days, just showing up means honestly, like just bury your head into something a little bit harder. Because I find when I'm doing a task, if I'm in front of a spreadsheet, I perform better than if I'm like running around my house thinking about this spreadsheet. So just do your
Uh-huh.
job. Just get into it. Just do it. Put some music on, make a cup of coffee, and just do something. Um, Show up and do it. It doesn't have to be perfect. There's a lot of expressions. I've heard this a lot in podcasts and mentoring as well. Show up and do it is better than not showing up at all. It's the same for the gym. Show up, get to the gym, do 20 minutes, better than doing nothing at all. So I take that same approach to work. Working clears my head in the worst way.
I get it. I remember I spoke to my personal trainer, my gym coach, and I love how he's developed himself into this brand, into this idol where he wins competitions and bodybuilding competitions and what have you. And I was asking him the other day, "What's your secret?" And he's like, "Bro, there are no secrets. That's the number one secret. No secrets are there. It really is that when I feel terrible, when I feel bad, when my worst days come knocking, it's simple. What I do is I will not let myself lose everything. I will do something, even if it's just 1%. If my usual days are 100 or 80, I'm going to do one. But the fact that I'm just going to be a potato couch and just lying down and ruminating about how terrible the day is, guess what? It's just going to become even more terrible.
Mm-hmm.
But when you do one thing, he's just like, I never let a day slip without 1%. And that 1% can simply be just lifting a dumbbell, a home dumbbell that you have, and just doing 5 reps. Thank you. That's all.
Yeah. I like that attitude, the mentality. And we would be surprised, and we often do surprise ourselves. Once you put on the running shoes, you didn't want to go running.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now the shoes are on. Let's go run. Put on some good music. Let's do it. Your mood changes when you just take that first step, right? Get that 1% in.
Oh my God. He just reminded me of what my father told me the other day. He's like, whenever you feel down in a certain area in your life and you just do not know what to do, you know, that lost moment. It's like, what am I even doing here? Change your state. That was his advice. And I was like, what? What does change my state mean? He was like, if you're sitting, stand up. If you're in home, leave the house. If you're in a coffee shop, go back home. If you're with a group of friends and you get that feeling, leave that group of friends right now. Sorry, guys, I just have an emergency call. Change your state and thank me later. And I did it. And guess what? That was gold.
Make a really big impact. So I was saying before how I live in the countryside, right? And sometimes it becomes a bit too quiet. I intentionally will go into Ho Chi Minh twice, 3 times per month because every time I go there, I'm antsy. I want to leave Mune. Okay, I want to get out. I want to get out. I go to Ho Chi Minh. Within 5 hours, I realize, there's too many people. It's crowded. There's too much. I want to go home. So just changing that state, like you said, changing the environment or your location makes you either appreciate or clears your head or it changes your attitude. So you understand more clearly what you need.
Right, right. And it's crazy how when you go back to Mune after you've been to Ho Chi Minh for 5 hours, nothing really has changed, but you somehow suddenly appreciate Mune and that cozy brown leather couch that you have all of a sudden, right?
Exactly.
It's that.
Yeah,
Great.
change your environment.
Change your environment, 100%. Um, hmm. I'm quite interested in knowing this personally, and that's going to be a very personal question, but I'm going to utilize my authority as the AE Talks podcast host, and I'm going to ask you that. But I would really love your answer there, though. What does success look like for you in a couple of years down the line, Scott?
It's a good question, and I've pondered this in many ways. I tend to do. I used to write a journal, and then I became less patient. So now I do like personal vlogs, and I'll speak to myself 1 year, 2 years later. Fantastic way if you're kind of in your head, you're thinking a lot about work or anything. Personal video vlogs, whatever you want to call them, they work wonders. So I've asked myself many times, what is success going to look like? In some areas, I want the classic hallmarks of success. That's normal, right? We want to be able to purchase land, although I'm in Vietnam, that likely won't happen. We want a car, we want a house, we want a family, we want all of these classic hallmarks, a successful business. Um, that would be nice. But I'm really an advocate to say that success is also your quality of life and your happiness and your community and your network, right? So if the people around me are doing well, nobody's majorly depressed, nobody's sinking or failing, to me, that's a personal win. If my family is secure, happy, safe, and has time for their creative life, for their own personality, that's a win, right? If I get time to have personal development, that's a win in itself. So it's less about material things and like financial standpoint and meeting these markers or KPIs, and it's more about like the holistic value of myself, my family, my friends. Are we all winning? Do we all have time to be mentally happy? Then that's a win.
Wow. Because usually you'd find most answers come circle back to the life's hallmarks, just like you said. But
Yeah.
it's rare. It's very rare that I hear how your happiness is controlled to some extent by by your surroundings, your family, your friends, your people, because somehow, some way, they do lure back this into you, right? In a way. And guess
Yeah.
what? If they're happy, you're happy. If they're not happy, there's a challenge
100%.
right here and there.
Yeah. If you've ever been stuck really closely with a coworker that's just majorly depressed or always looking on the low side of life, they're pessimistic, it brings you down. It brings you emotionally and physically down. So either A, you bump those people up, or B, you just don't hang so closely with those people. And in turn, your life starts to rise. You start to become more appreciative. You start to hang around people that value life. They value their free time. They value their family as well. So I think it's a full circle. Of course, I do like the material things as well. I have personal hallmarks for my financial goals, my 5-year goals, my business goals as well. But they don't override mental and physical happiness, health, wealth, and family.
Mm-hmm. It's just that balance that you try to keep in line to the best of your
Yeah,
ability. I mean, like, we're all humans, so some things would you come at the cost of other things, but in the
yeah, we need to
entirety,
eat.
yeah,
Yeah,
we need to eat. There you go. I like how you just simplified it. We need to eat. Period.
yeah. Nothing else is important.
Oh yeah. Uh, Scott, we're coming toward the end of the show. I cannot thank you further. I would just let you end it in a way, if you would like to, with a piece of advice to whoever's listening, to that random stranger who just popped up and would decided to give us 1.5 hours of their time. What would you tell them
Well,
after listening to that podcast?
Del, thank you for having me on your show as well. It's lovely just to talk with you as a friend. We have good conversations. So I would do
Yeah.
this with or without the podcast. If somebody is just clicking in and they've watched the entire video, like and subscribe. Be sure to hit that like button. That's number one. Um, Otherwise, you know, people have very unique lives, and I think if they did sit down and watch an hour and a half video, that's fantastic. Humans are humans. We like to connect with people. We like to just hear other opinions, just food for thought. So I think keep doing that, right? The more we listen, the more we read, we listen to conversations, we are experienced with different people, we get different connections in this world. It grows you as an individual, as an entrepreneur, as a worker. It doesn't matter. I think we need to have more absorption of different lives, different people, different culture, because that benefits us, right? We grow as individuals.
All
So,
right.
yeah, thank you for having me on this call. It's
Of course.
lovely to chat with you. Next time, I promise I will have a microphone like yours.
You're doing great yourself, man. No worries about it.